Yeah, I just got on. Hi, everybody.
Good morning, Congressman. How are you? Thank you.
I'm doing well. My apologies for keeping everybody waiting. We just had some business down the House floor, and I just got back to my office and got connected. So I do apologize for keeping everybody waiting. I know your time's very valuable.
No problem. We appreciate you joining us. I know it was a crazy day. You got called back to Washington last night, I believe, right? So
yeah, we came down yesterday. We had some votes, and we have some later on. We had a couple this morning. I just came back from down at the Capitol, and I'm over in the office building now. So
good. Well, it's great to see you. I'm glad you're doing well and can be with us today. So we have about 30 or so. I think we're expecting about 50, so they'll come in as they get time, but we would love to hear your update and what you have going on. Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Gina Sedan, the president of the Wyoming County Chamber of Commerce, and we are thrilled today to have Congressman Fred Keller join us from Washington with an update on what's been happening and some of the new PPP legislation and, well, all of the changes, right, to the stimulus package. So we appreciate you giving us an update today.
Thank you, Gina. And I want to thank everybody that's on the call. And of course, really let you know that I appreciate all of you and the people that couldn't make it. You're the heart of our community, and you're what makes our community successful. And it's really an honor to be able to do the work here in Washington on behalf of everyone in Pennsylvania's 12th Congressional District. I'd like to talk about a couple things just to sort of outline what we're doing. The work that we've done in Congress to promote the targeted relief for our small businesses, working families. Some of the provisions of the bill that apply to that. And then also look to the future of what's upcoming in the 117th Congress. I know we've been, since the beginning of the pandemic, it's sort of changed how we look at some things, and these meetings are one of those things. But the one thing remains that our businesses do a great job. They employ a lot of people in our communities. And you know, we approach this from the fact that the best stimulus is a job, and we need to support our job creators. And we do that by having these meetings and listening to what is important to everybody. So I'll just get into a little bit of the provisions that we worked on for the legislation. And this is what passed in the end of December and became law. And it's the biggest thing part of that I would like to talk about is the Paycheck Protection Program. The rollout, the first draw on PPP loans as it opened up again, it was about $280 billion, but it opened up on January 11th for businesses that maybe didn't get in last time. The second draw for businesses that will open up on the 13th, which is today, and that'll be for people that maybe had a PPP loan but is severely impacted and needs a little more help. And then, of course, all the information will be out to the participating lenders. This round of PPP, as I mentioned, is a little more than $280 billion. And it helps cover job retention and other expenses as we outlined in the first bill. It's pretty much, you know, the ratio once we changed it last time to the 60-40. 40 is still in that neighborhood for expenses through March 31st, 2021. And here's an important change, and we heard this from a lot of people, and we had to work very hard to get Treasury, and we were on the phone with the Secretary Mnuchin, quite a bit, and others to understand the importance of the deductibility of the PPP. You know, because their mindset was you didn't have to pick it up as income. Why should we be deducting the expenses? And once we worked through that, that became part of the legislation, which I was glad we were able to get that done. Another important part also makes 501c6s for eligible, which includes our local chambers of commerce. And I think that was helpful because a lot of our small businesses rely on our chambers for advocacy and other items. And also we look at the second round of the PPP. The businesses have to have fewer than 300 employees and have to demonstrate a reduction in income or revenue of 25%, trying to get it to the hardest hit areas. Also, another important part is simplified the PPP loan forgiveness application, which should soon be out. As soon as we have that information, as soon as we know that's all out, we'll let everybody know. Want to let you know that if you do need help, please contact our office. Either we have Tunkhannock office, we have the office in Williamsport, but please contact us. You can either call the number, and I think somebody might be able to get that to Gina, or might be able to put it in the text box. I think some of our members of our team are on, or go to keller.house.gov. But the forgiveness is a one-page application for loans of $150,000 or less. It also removes the provision that required the PPP borrowers to deduct their EIDL or their economic injury disaster loans from their PPP loan forgiveness. I think we thought that was an important thing to help our small businesses. In addition to that, there's grants for shut venues that were closed, which would include theaters, museums, zoos. So if there's any businesses that fall into those categories, there are some grants for them. Transportation industry, $15 billion for passenger air carriers through the payroll support program that was created in the CARES Act, but a little bit more money in there for that. Some direct support to our airports, and also there's $2 billion in grants and loans for transportation providers, which include motor coach, also over the road bus industry, private school bus operators, which is important because we have several of those in our district, and it likely will be very helpful for them. The EIDL loans, $20 billion to restart and extend the advanced grant, and that's intended for small businesses in low-income communities. And it also creates a process for existing EIDL advanced grantees who received fewer than $10,000 to be able to apply for the difference between what they received and up to $10,000. So a little bit of things there. Additional small business items: increase the loan cap for hotels and restaurants, permanent tax status for craft beverage industry, troubled debt restructuring disclosure, so some things that help our banks out, the CECL standard, current expected credit losses. I know there were some requests from our community banks to have some extensions on the implementation of that. We're able to get some of that done. And so vitally important, and things that we worked on very, very hard to get in here for our farmers, education, and healthcare providers. And education has $82 billion for funding for schools and universities, and that's to get the reopening in person safely, so we have kids in school in person. There's money designated for private K through 12 education. There's some money for elementary and secondary school to go to K to 12 schools. Important thing here: farmers, $13 billion in support to farmers, ranchers, and other parts of the agricultural sector. Enhanced assistance under the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or CFAP, for specialty crop, non-specialty crop, dairy, livestock. So there's our poultry producers. Also, there's money for the purchase of food and agricultural products for distribution, and also money for food processors to provide PPE or purchase PPE. An important part in rural Pennsylvania and rural America is rural broadband. There's money for rural broadband development, $300 million, $250 million for the FCC to carry out the telehealth pilot program authorized under the original CARES Act. Important for being able to open things safely is money for healthcare, $20 billion for the purchase of vaccines to make them available at no charge to people. $8 billion for the distribution, money to assist with states testing. Also the provider relief fund, created under the CARES Act to help support our rural hospitals. So there's been some things in there to make sure our communities can conduct business safely. So while we're looking at things, we're looking at what's targeted. There's some things that happened with this bill, and you probably saw it in the news. It was lumped together with the normal appropriations bill, and the president, was sort of upset that it had a lot of things in it that it should not have had in it. But at the end of the day, there's those who supported it, those who didn't, but we got it across the finish line for the small business. I wish it would have been more narrowly tailored as far as the spending, and also the for the budget, but then also for the making sure we're targeted. And I thought we did a good job on the CARES end of it, targeting those things. And the reason I say that is our national debt is $27 trillion. And in 2019, the first budget I voted on down here in Congress, I doing all the research, and the Congressional Budget Office said if we did nothing different, and this was October of 2019, that the money we spend on debt service by the year 2025 would outpace what we spend on defense. And to me, if we're not in good financial shape, we're not helping anybody. And so that's why anything we do going forward needs to make sure that it's narrowly tailored to addressing the needs of America's families, workers, and small businesses. So after we did that, I'd like to sort of move forward in what we look at going forward, look at the next Congress. And I would say that the things we need are job readiness skills. My committee assignments haven't been finalized as I think only the Rules Committee was, because there was some of the things we were called back to Washington for needed to be taken care of through rules. But I'm anticipating being on education and labor again, and also oversight and reform. In addition to that, on the House Energy Action Team. So with that, the job readiness, being on the Education Committee and Education and Labor is so important, making sure that we have people that are coming out of high school and going into the job market, or adults that might be changing careers, have the ability to get the necessary skills for the jobs that are available and that they may want to do. Another thing is infrastructure. In addition to the roads and bridges, broadband is so important. We always knew that, but I think this sort of heightened it, the awareness for everybody. So we need to look at how we do that. And my approach to that has been, and I know there's some people have been very creative. I know Bradford County's been working on some things, and Tri-County has done some things up in Tioga County and so on. But we really need to have an approach that is not fragmented like we see it now in different areas of the government, but sort of do and like we did when the internet or the interstate highway system was built. There was a coordinated effort to make sure that got done, and it was done effectively and efficiently. It took several years to do it because that was passed. Of course, it's the Eisenhower interstate system for a reason, but I know some of that was still being built when I was young in the late 60s and early 70s. So, but we need to have that commitment, and that's what I'm working toward, to make sure people realize a different way of approaching it, because it's so important for our conducting business, learning, and of course telehealth. So, and as I talked about job skills, along with that comes student loans and how we approach making sure those things get taken care of. Just forgiving student loans across the board, as I mentioned, given our financial situation, is not a good idea. But some transparency things, realistic borrowing, those kind of things, and making sure that our kids are getting that education in school, so they can make the decisions that don't saddle them with a lot of debt. So small businesses, making sure that we stand up for what's happening. We need to make sure that we can get back to the economic gains we saw over the 4 years prior to the pandemic, and support the policies of taxes, fewer taxes, and making sure that the regulatory environment isn't too burdensome. along with the permitting process. So a lot of things that we can do to be supportive, and we really want to work on those items. And now what I'd like to do, if I can, Gina, is turn it back over to however you'd like to run the meeting. But before I do that, there's an important part as we've been talking to different businesses across PA 12, and some have said, well, we're sort of apprehensive to apply for the Paycheck Protection or some of these programs because they think they're taking a handout. And if there's one thing I found about the people of PA 12, we're very proud, and our businesses do a great job. But I don't want anybody that's considering needing that help to think of it as a handout. You have supported our communities. You've done all the right things. You've paid your taxes, and you've built your businesses. You've helped our communities. And through no fault of your own, after we got hit with this virus, you were told there were things you could not do, which impacted how you do business, the business you could do. So this is something that we definitely should be doing to help those who have been such great partners and have done so much to create our good communities. So I just wanted to throw that up because I had somebody say that to me a little while ago, and they felt bad, and I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want anybody to feel bad because you're outstanding people running your business, doing things properly, and this is the right thing for us to be doing, to be responsive to your needs. So I'll turn it back over to you, Gina.
I couldn't get my mouse to hover over my mute button. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for saying that. I see it here, right? Growing up in rural Wyoming County, people are proud. And this is not a time to let that pride turn into failure, right? This is a time to come together as a community, which we have, and continue to come together as a community and take what is available to help your business thrive. And I think that's important. I want to highlight a few things you said, and also something that I have heard on an SBA call that I don't think you mentioned, but I think it's very important for those that are getting PPP and that have taken out a PPP loan already. The employer retention tax credit now can also be taken in conjunction with your PPP loan. So that is payroll taxes that you have paid on behalf of your employees. Those taxes can be credited back, and they've expanded the amount as well. And I have some one-pagers from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that I'll be sure to post on our website so you can all see them, and I'll be sure they're included in our next weekly newsletter. But that's an important piece of this legislation as well, is that now you can take both a PPP loan and receive this employee retention tax credit. So that's very important for you all to know as businesses.
Thanks, Gina. I appreciate pointing that out.
And I think I just want to say, really thank you for all the great things that you have done with this. I know it's not an ideal package, right? Which is, again, I think you pointed that out. There were some things missing. Liability protection for businesses is one of them, and I know you continue to fight for that. So I'm thankful, and I know our businesses are thankful for that. Again, I want to also thank you as a Chamber of Commerce, the 501c6 organizations being included in PPP. That is a very big deal, not only for us as a Chamber of Commerce, but for all the chambers across the country. We were very fortunate. We have a strong community. We have a very strong chamber, but I know others really struggled and had to lay off a lot of staff, and that's certainly a hard thing to do. So,
well, Gina, if I can just jump in there, and you mentioned putting the one pager and thing out. That's the thing our chambers do for our businesses. So that's why it's so important that we support the chambers also.
Yes, and we do appreciate this. I know the U.S. Chamber, along with all of our state chambers, really fought hard to get that included. So thank you for that. I want to give all of you time to ask your questions and comment on this legislation, because that's why our congressman is here today. That's why we provided you with this time. It's not for he and I to talk, it's for you to talk to him. So if you're camera shy and you don't want to talk, you can type it in the chat and I will talk on your behalf. If you want to unmute yourself and talk, we can certainly do that as well. So I think you all have the ability to control your own microphone. So if you want to unmute and say something, we can do that at this time. Everybody will be shy.
I have a comment. One of the things that I haven't seen addressed is the volume of startup businesses that took place in 2019 with the hope that they would launch in 2020 and essentially put a major investment into their startup and failed because the business was closed or not able to reach their clientele that they were reaching out. With 543,000 startups every month, that's a huge number of investments that took place in the startup community that for many was lost and not able to show any revenue stream or employee counts that meant anything to the PPP or to the EIDL loan.
Yeah, Richard, thanks for that. And that's also falls in line with businesses that may have already been operating, but actually in 2019 started preparing for more growth, and then actually never saw that growth in 2020 due to what happened. That's an item that we have on our list of things, and I'm sorry I didn't include that, but that's on our list of things. Not necessarily, I wasn't thinking startups, so I appreciate that, but investments that were made by our businesses and anticipation of more employees and doing more things. So yeah, definitely as we move forward, we'll make sure that we advocate on how we can help out that sector to get the help they need and help with some of those expenses they've had.
Perfect, thank you.
We're getting a couple of questions in the chat. One would be, is the 150 easy forgiveness on a total combined first and second PPP, or is it that the PPP loans are considered two separate loans? Do you know?
We'll get some clarity on that. It was, and I'm not gonna say my understanding was that it was per loan, but we'll make sure we get the clarity on that. I'd hate to say that, but our team will get back to you, Gina, with the answer on that.
And that was my understanding too, and this is a good time for me to plug that we will be having, in conjunction with our regional chamber partnership, a PPP reopening webinar held with Rob Goza of the U.S. Small Business Administration. That'll be next Tuesday on January 19th. So we haven't officially put that in any newsletter. Just got the marketing materials for that today. So we'll send that out later today and post it so you can begin to register for that. But that's where those technical questions will be able to be answered a little better. That
was certainly our intent, but like I said, I would want to make sure that we follow up on that.
Yes, and as we know, with the intention, like you said, with the $10,000 EIDL advance getting changed when it got into the rules and policies, that was something I was glad you guys were able to reverse this time. So if you received less than $10,000 on your EIDL advance, in the upcoming weeks, you'll be able to reapply and get that full $10,000 advance. And that's forgivable. That's a grant. That's a $10,000 grant. So you do not have to pay that back. So if you have received an EIDL advance less than $10,000, please watch our website for that information as well, our newsletter. We have another question in the chat, Congressman, and that's about self-employed persons. So they continue to have a difficult time finding the help they need. I know that this package expanded PUA, but what else is being done for them right now?
Well, I know we did a lot of things, as you mentioned, you know, with the unemployment and so forth. And as far as needing help, specific, it might be different for each business. I would say if somebody has a question and could contact our office, our legislative staff or our district director might be able to help them navigate to where they need it, where they need to go. Because I know there's some help out there without. It's hard for me to point to the exact spot with a 5,000 page bill, but we actually have our team could take that specific question and help somebody through that. If as I mentioned, we'll get our contact information out for the Tunkhannock and the Williamsport office and keller.house.gov. But yeah, we want to make sure that we're helping these self-employed people, because a lot of times, it's they're doing a lot in our communities, and we want to make sure that they have the resources they need. And it might be a different resource depending upon what their issue is. So we'd be happy to dig into anything that somebody that's self-employed or might need help with.
Great. We appreciate that. I'm just reading some of the questions here.
Hi, Fred. This is Matt Austin. We've met a few times. How are you? Yeah, I have a quick question for the small businesses that run their numbers and show a 20, 22, 24% loss. What can you say for those businesses that are going to have a 30-year EDIL loan saddled on them? Well, had they not ran to the bank one more time before the end of the year or in any other quarter, would have had that money forgiven and had the opportunity to get a second PPP. I say this because a lot of small businesses in the United States have single-digit returns at the end of the year. So that 25% is a pretty high number. And it's going to exclude a lot of people that really needed the help.
Well, that's one thing that we look at, and I know it's been said that we'd likely see some more stimulus as we get into the new administration. I know there's been talk about that. For being able to get this done and get it out, the number of 25 was selected. If we need to make an adjustment to that, and as we move forward, more than willing to take a look at that and see what that number should be, or where we should be on that. 25 was just a cutoff where we knew we're trying to hit the most severely impacted businesses. That doesn't mean that if you fell, to your point, at 22 or 18% or whatever, because I know from being in business, your margins. I was in the cabinet business. Our margins were like 3%. Okay, so you're not talking about big margins. So I do understand that. Unfortunately, with the money we had and the resources and the agreement we set it at 25. Looking forward, I would certainly be willing to advocate for a different number, and maybe we can get together and see if it should be set up differently based upon the industry.
Sure, I'm ready when you are.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And I would say to those businesses that are maybe not able to get a second PPP right now, to really look into that employee retention tax credit. Yeah. Talk to your accountants. I'm not sure how to go back, right? So I know how to file it for the current quarter, but I don't know if you can take the credit on past taxes that you've already paid, past payroll taxes that you've already paid, that maybe you did qualify for that credit, but because you took a PPP, you didn't think you would. So keep that in mind, that might be something eligible to our small businesses. There is one more question, and this is about the new PPP, the second loan process, and a schedule based on the size of the bank when the process opens. So I know from an SBA call that our small community banks are able to open their PPP second round lending first. Community banks, this CDFIs, which would be like your Metro Action here in this area, and our credit unions. They did that because they wanted to give small businesses who typically, again, do business with smaller community banks, they wanted to give them the opportunity to get the first round or the second round of PPP first. Am I saying that correctly, Congressman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then it'll be open again to those larger banks that have more of those larger corporate accounts. But this way, we all know the stories of the very large businesses that got PPP initially that I know really hit all of us. One thing they did do this time for PPP was they reduced the number of employees. So they went from 500, which is the SBA small business definition, 500 or less employees. They did reduce that to 300 employees, which I know, for us doesn't affect many of our businesses in our area, but I thought it was good that they're, again, honing in on what a small business really does look like, and it's not, 500 employees.
Yeah, you're correct on that as far as the size of the business and also the way it was rolled out to make sure that it got to the smaller businesses first. And that was really the intent of what we're doing.
Congressman, I have one other point. One of the issues that we've run into on a national basis with some of the larger traditional 7A and 504 SBA lenders is they've been so overwhelmed with the PPP that they've shut the door for traditional lending for the people and small businesses that don't necessarily qualify for the EIDL loans or PPP, but are interested in SBA financing to continue the growth of their stifled business that they would ordinarily qualify, and they don't qualify for traditional bank lending necessarily from their current bank resources during this time. And the SBA was allowing a 6-month deferral on any new SBA 7A or 504 loans during this pandemic, as well as forgiveness on original SBA loans that were in place prior to the pandemic. So it's really affected traditional lending to the normal businesses that would seek out 7A or 504 loans.
So it's a decision, as I understand, it's a decision on some of the banks being able to process the SBA loans because they're focused on the paycheck protection and those forgiveness items.
Absolutely, and I deal with one of the largest non-bank SBA loans. They process $3 billion in PPP, but shut their doors from 7A and 504 because their staff couldn't handle the traditional financing.
Okay. So
that's happened with local banks too that don't handle volumes of SBA.
Yeah, and that's so we need to make sure there's some kind of resources or something available to help people get the loan if they're not qualifying for the paycheck protection and so on.
Especially since the SBA was allowing that deferral, it was an opportune time to apply for a traditional 7A or 504 since the first 6 months were deferred or forgiven.
Okay.
And what I would say to that is, remember our Northern Tier Regional Planning and Development Partnership. So the Regional Planning and Development Commission does those SBA loans as well as the Small Business Development Center out of the University of Scranton, and they handle Wyoming County. So both of those agencies can lend that money as well. And they are not doing PPP loans, so that may be an avenue to get small business help at this time.
But aren't those still going through a lending institution?
I would have to talk to the directors of both of those programs, but I believe they have avenues to get it done right now because they do most of the processing or help with processing in-house, right? So they've done a lot of the legwork before it gets to the bank.
Mm-hmm. Richard, if I can ask a question, would it be helpful as we get through some more of this PPP, and you mentioned the first 6 months defer or forgiven, if we might extend that period of time, would that be helpful to some of our businesses?
Well, I think absolutely.
Okay.
If they have the window of opportunity to get in on that, it would be a helping hand for what they don't qualify for conventional lending, the support of the SBA loans gave them a lift up so they could bring their business back into profitability and growth.
But extending that because they weren't able to get in before might be helpful to them.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And something like that may have been in this, again, 5,593 pages, because as we said that, I do remember that SBA call with the U.S. Chamber that mentioned this, that was possible now, the extension of that. So I'm going to look that up as well.
Yeah, Gina, I made a note of that to make sure that we can clear that up.
Perfect. Do we have any other questions out there for the Congressman at this point? Check my chat again. Anne, who is the district director at Congressman Keller's office, put her contact information in the chat. So if you'd like to copy that down, she put her email address there if you have questions that you want to email directly or very specific questions. I know we had some about being self-employed and some of those questions. You could email them to his office, and they do a great job with research and getting to the bottom of issues. So I'd say if you're having issues with anything like the PUA or a second PPP, please contact his office.
Thank you, Gina. You guys have been a great partner to be able to get to work with, and so have all our small businesses. So I just want to say thank you for your work.
I know you have a very busy day there in Washington. I want to make sure everybody had the opportunity to get their questions answered. Again, we will be hosting in partnership with some of the other regional chambers, the SBA next week, so we can ask them more technical questions and dig into some of these technical issues, such as, when these idle advance will be able to be open again and things like that. They'll know those answers. Fred, parting words.
Well, again, I'd just like to thank everybody for having me. And it's very kind of you to recognize and say that we're busy working on things down here. But keep in mind, having run a business, I know that you work very diligently, and all the members, everybody on the call works very diligently. You took time out for this call. I appreciate it. And if there's anything at all that we can do to be helpful, we work for you. We'll definitely get you answers. The input, Matt, we'll make sure we get together on some of those ideas because that's really what we're here to do and help make sure that we all succeed together. So again, I thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and we will schedule more meetings so that we can stay in contact and make sure that your voice gets into the policy as we work here in DC.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
And we truly appreciate your time. I appreciate each and every member and non-member who took the time to join us today for this call. I think it's important to continue to get information out there to all of you. So as this information starts to change again, we'll be holding more webinars and more updates. We look forward to hosting the Congressman, hopefully in person sometime in 2021, right? We're eager to see each other in person again in our community, and we hope that we can get you up here for that. So thank you all for your time.
I'd love to do it. It's great to get out. The best part is meeting all the people that make things happen in our communities and being able to get that input so we get it right. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a great day, everyone.
Bye.